It's 32 5 minutes ago. Now it's 35.
It literally was. So, John, there was a development today. I'll let you kind of tell me what it was, but it had to do with some documents that the SEC didn't want the Ripple team to see. But now a judge is saying that they're probably going to have to turn them over. Can you just brief us on that?
Well, basically, the judges ordered that documents that the SEC has that relate to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP and their analysis of them and whether the securities laws applies has been relevant. And she's ordered it twice, but the SEC has claimed that each and every single document they have related to that is privileged, either attorney-client privilege or what's called the deliberative process privilege. And the judge is currently involved in an in-camera review to review those documents herself, and then decide whether or not they need to be turned over. But what we learned is that there are 3 additional documents that Ripple found out. 2 of those documents relate to law firms coming into the SEC to discuss the confusion and the lack of clarity as it relates to securities laws and digital assets. And then there's an email that involves a chain of email at the SEC where the SEC gave advice to some entrepreneurs about how they should apply an analysis of the Hinman speech to their digital asset. I think it's Ether, but that's me speculating because we don't know which law firm and we don't know which digital asset.
And let's just unpack this a little bit. The Hinman speech is a very prominent speech in this entire Ripple XRP case because it was Mr. Hinman, I think his name is John Hinman, or Bill Hinman? Bill Hinman was the head of corporate finance at the SEC, who came out and gave a speech at a Yahoo conference where he kind of set the markers in terms of SEC enforcement and regulation of cryptocurrencies, where he said Ether's okay, Bitcoin's okay, but XRP, he didn't mention XRP, but he basically left out the ones that weren't that okay in his view. The fascinating thing about that speech, and I wish I had the copy of it, I don't, but you should read some of his comments. There was a weird comment that he made in the speech. I see if I can pull it up, Ellie. I mean, it was like his backhanded way of suggesting that, well, Ethereum might have done something bad in the past that was contrary to our laws. But
he said something like disregarding Ethereum's.
We should get.
He didn't say ICO, but disregarding Ethereum's.
We should really get the exact language, because the language is.
John, you might know. He said.
I do.
Give me a second.
Go ahead.
He said, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the Ethereum launch, and that's sort of the comment that Charlie's getting at. It was sort of this backward recognition of, okay, it was probably a security, or it was a security, but if we disregard that, today it's sufficiently decentralized. That's in essence what he said.
Yeah, I mean, applying the disclosure. Here we go. And so when I look at Bitcoin today, I do not see a central third party whose efforts are key determining factor in the enterprise. Okay, we got that with Bitcoin because that was the first one, right? The network on which Bitcoin functions is operational, appears to be decentralized for some time, perhaps from inception. Probably true. Applying the disclosure regime of the federal securities laws to the offer and resale of Bitcoin would seem to add little value. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network and its decentralized structure currently offers and sales Ether, current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transaction. And as with Bitcoin, applying the disclosure regime of the federal securities laws to current transactions in Ether would seem to add little value. So it sounds like, and I would love to get him on, he's saying what they did in the past would be problematic. They were not. They did not come to us. They did not register with us. Blah blah blah. That's what he seems to say. And then he's saying, well, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Now, unless I'm missing something, and I know, John, you're biased here, you know, and obviously, I mean, you know,
Of course.
you're an advocate for something.
Sure.
I want to be convinced that what Ripple did with XRP is that much different than what Ether did. I mean, and I don't see that much daylight between the two. Am I right here?
Well, yeah. Listen, the Ripple XRP ledger pre-existed Ripple, so it
Right.
was completely functional and decentralized. And then Ripple started utilizing it. Now, the thing that makes the Ripple case interesting, I guess, is that they own 55% of the outstanding XRP.
Right.
And but there's no test in the securities law. The Howey test doesn't have a factor that says, well, it depends on how much a particular company owns of the underlying asset, right? And so I think the SEC, for whatever reason, has come up with this theory that, well, that means every sale of XRP for the last 8 years is a security. But
Right. There's two stories here. There's your story that said if you bought this thing in an open market, this thing was trading as a currency. Don't wrap us in this. The earlier stuff might be a security, but this definitely is not. I know where you're coming from on that. What I'm drawing attention to is again, I'd like to see them explain this to me. The double standard. Ether was created, Ethereum was created the same way Ether was created, in the same way with a security, with what looks like a security, as what Ripple was created. And why is there this double standard? And it's listen, they have not unpacked that for us, and we keep asking. You know, by the way, there's nothing stopping Gary Gensler now, who's this current SEC chair, to go back in time and to ding Ethereum for not registering at first, you know, to build out their network.
that's right.
And by the way, there's nothing stopping Ethereum from calling me and saying, because we've tried, Charlie, here's where you're wrong. Here's
Right.
why we're different. And they're not doing it. And this sort of silence, you know, the problem with this silence, John and Ellie, my view is it lends credibility to all the sort of allegations of wicked conflicts of interest. Because then you start looking at, okay, why aren't they doing it? Well, Jay, who I like Jay Clayton a lot, to be honest with you, I've known him. I mean, he works here that does business with this, which is tied to Ether. The guy that brought the case, one of the head enforcement officials, is doing this. He's, you know, something that ties to Ether. Hinman's got some time. I mean, it's just bizarre. That's what that's
John, from a lawyer's standpoint, would you say that's because they're, you know, currently involved in this case with with Ripple versus the SEC, or because, you know, you think they might have something to hide?
Well, listen, I think that until they come out, Charlie and you have covered this story very right down the middle. You know, obviously I'm biased because I represent, you know, now 35,000 XRP holders, but it just doesn't make sense. Charlie, for example, in 2019, and Ellie, Coinbase went to the SEC in January 2019 with a memo from a law firm saying XRP is not a security. We're going to list it,
right.
unless you tell us otherwise.
And then they listed it. They didn't say
And they
anything.
listed it, and they didn't say anything. And then that gives credence to Jay Clayton walking out the door, slapping this lawsuit as he walks out the door.
I just want to be real careful here because, you know, Jay's not here to defend himself, and neither is Mr. Hinman or the other guy. I just want to say, you know, these sort of you know, the smoke doesn't mean there's necessarily fire. Confluence does not equal conspiracies. Things just happen.
Right.
It could be, just so you know. I mean, I'm just surmising off the top of my head because I've seen regulation in action, particularly in nascent industries, which, you know, crypto and blockchain is, that they literally wanted to put the lid on the expansion of this industry. There were two major players out there, and they really don't want anything more. And then, coincidentally, they all go into private practice. And guess what they do? Well, when lawyers go into private practice, you know, when people leave the Justice Department, they go represent bad guys in front of the Justice Department. Yeah, or people arrested. It's just the way it works. And so all of a sudden, coincidentally, they start working for stuff that involves Ether. So it may not be the grand conspiracy, but man, there's a lot of these weird connections that You know, they should really explain it. They should get. I don't think Jay does. Again, I said this on air. He doesn't do himself any favors by just doing these sort of wishy-washy interviews on CNBC, which is not going to ask him anything tough. You know.
Well, you've given him. Listen, you've called it down the middle. You said that you like Jay. You think he's a good guy. You're actually giving them the benefit of the doubt. There's no reason for them not to come answer fair questions posed by you.
Right. I
But
mean,
legally,
again, what's the difference fundamentally from what Ethereum did and what Ripple did? And then why is Ethereum okay when they did in the past? Again, you can go back in time. There's nothing stopping it. I don't think it's statute of limit. When did they build out Ethereum?
2000. They did the launch in 2014 is when they did their ICO, their initial coin offering.
Is there a statute of limitation on something like that?
Well, you know what, Charlie, in the last bill that got passed just before President Trump left, they expanded the disgorgement statute to 10 years.
So there you go.
There you go.
So they can go back. I mean, I just like to know why. I think we're also assuming that Jay Clayton won't go back. He might go back. Just saying. I mean, I'm not saying he will. I mean, I don't know what's on his agenda. He's got a full agenda of a lot of it's nonsense, but but
legally though, John, can they talk to us?
Of course. I mean, there's no reason for the Ethereum investors in the group. Charlie was talking about what stands out in the Hinman speech. One of the things that stand out for me is when Charlie read when Bill Hinman said, based on my understanding of the current, well, what's the basis for his understanding? Because I believe we've been able to prove that it was the Ethereum investors who lobbied for him. They gave the safe harbor proposal. You have lawyers who wrote that memo who are publicly stated that Bill Hinman followed his memo in the speech. And so those are the things that there's nothing to stop them from coming to answering those questions.
By the way, that speech was pretty crazy in this sense. I can't believe they allowed him to give that speech. I mean, if you're gonna start making policy at the friggin' Yahoo conference, I mean, give me a effing break. Ellie, you know too much about this. You know a lot of the details. You've been deep diving into all these conflicts. Give us a little chronology on what Hinman did, and John, maybe you can weigh in. I mean, he gave the speech, then he disavowed it, or he said it was his. Give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, so he gave the speech in 2018, I believe, John, right?
Yep.
And it was at this conference, and basically, allegedly, he took the majority of the speech out of the proposals that were written by the law firms, people who backed Ether. That were
wait, how do you know that? How do you know he took it out directly?
Because it's literally like lifted word for word, right, John? Pretty much.
Yeah. You look at it,
proposal.
But not just that, but the lawyer who wrote it, who signed the memo, we have him on video, and it's posted on my site, where he says, quote, Bill Hinman speech tracked my memo. Right on. Like he literally says it himself. So this isn't speculation.
And by the way, did Hinman admit to any of this in his deposition before the Ripple lawyer?
No, what Hinman ended up doing is the SEC actually did something even more crazy than what you already said of them having him do it in the first instance, is that he signed an affidavit stating that the speech was his personal opinion and not that of the SEC. He
signed that affidavit in the Ripple litigation.
Yes.
Yes. See, that to me is like, I mean, what is this? By the way,
that was after he said literally on the same day at the same speech, this is SEC policy. This is Jay Clayton and the SEC wanting to clear up.
Let's be real clear here, Ellie. Did he really say that? Did he? And how did he say that?
He did say that. He said that in the same speech on stage, I believe, right after he gave his speech. He said, I said this to clear up what, investors are asking us, to give us more clarity surrounding securities laws when it comes to regulating cryptocurrency.
Right.
And he said
not in so many words, but
right.
Okay. Did he mention Clayton by name?
I believe so. Yes.
The
SEC and Jay Clayton came up in what he said.
That to me is pretty pretty amazing. It's just this speech was probably one of the more ill-advised, in my view. This is me, Charlie Gasparino, pontificating. So I could be a jerk too and not know anything. So just take it for what it's worth. I feel like Joe Rogan when he said, "Listen, I'm an asshole. Don't listen to me." When Joe said that about COVID. But I'm going to say the same thing. But it seems like an incredibly ill-advised speech to be giving in the middle of this mania involving corporate crypto and blockchain and different currencies and regulators trying to get their arms around it. You're the head of corporate finance, and you're giving your personal opinion,
right,
and you're not stating it. This is just he should have stated that right at the beginning here. This is my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with policy. He does, in his defense, though, he does not run enforcement. Remember that.
right.
And the SEC is divided up into different sectors, but they all talk to each other. I'm sure he has Clayton's ear. And we should also point out, just so you know, with Clayton, to be fair to him, he acquiesces often to the staff of the enforcement division. So it's not just him making the call. It's, the staff came to him with this. I mean, how they arrived to it, I have no idea,
Charlie Ellie, you might be surprised by this, but do you know who never got a copy of that draft speech? Crypto Mom.
Oh, really?
No. At his deposition that the Ripple lawyers took of what we could see, Bill Hinman admitted that Jay Clayton was the only commissioner to receive a draft copy, and when he was asked why, he said, "Because I didn't believe that the input from the other commissioners was worth the potential delay." That's a direct quote.
That is crazy.
Wow.
Because, by the way, she's a Republican. He's a Republican. I mean, this isn't breaking party loyalty by any stretch of the imagination. Listen, I could talk about this, and I could talk to John about this stuff, and I know you can too, Ellie, all day. But unfortunately, you guys can keep the conversation going. I have to do a Cavuto hit on Fox News right now.
You do. We'll wrap it up. John, I want to ask you one last thing, and that's kind of just what's going to happen from here. I know we're waiting on a whole bunch of stuff for it to, through the courts to be approved, but like, what's the next step? How long can we, when can we expect to see a result here?
I think the next big thing is going to be the judge, probably the first week of November. I could be off a week. Is going to rule on this privileged issue and whether Ripple gets these documents. One of the documents is actually a legal analysis by the SEC on XRP that was passed around the day before the Hinman speech.
I can't wait for that. All right, I got to go, guys, before I lose my hit.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.